In which we live, everybody has a prayer partner. It seems like everyone has prayer partners, prayer companions, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there will be moments where you have to make it very personal, where you yourself have to learn how to lean on God. You can't lean on mama's prayers. You can't lean on daddy's prayers. You can't lean on your prayer partner's prayers. But you've got to know how to go to God in sincere prayer, and you've got to know how to lean on God. The problem with many of us is that we've leaned on too many props. What do you mean by leaned on too many props? Some of us, we've leaned on the props of our family, leaned on the props of our friends, leaned on the props of our finances, leaned on the props of our flesh, leaned on the props of the future. And guess what? All of those things are futile, and all of those things will fail you. But there is one prop that you can lean on that will never leave you, that will never fail you, and that prop is the Father himself. Family will walk out, they'll leave you. Friends will fail you. Finances will leave you. Your flesh will fail you. But you've got to understand the Father that we have, the Father who is in heaven, that is one that you can cry aloud. And notice David didn't say, I silently cried to God. He didn't say, I silently trusted in God. But David lifted his voice. Sometimes you have to get by yourself where you can scream to God to the top of your lungs. You say, God, I need you, and I need you in the midst of the situation that I'm dealing with. So David, he's suffering in this very difficult situation. But watch what happens in the text. He not only trusts God, and you've got to trust God. Trusting God is putting the whole of your confidence in God. That is you leaning on God with every single fiber of your faith and your being, where you put all of your trust in God. That simply says this. It's the worst investment that you could imagine from the Wall Street broker to put all of your marbles in one basket. But with God, that's the best thing that you can do. That's the best investment that you can make with your life, is putting everything on God, because the one thing about God is God will never, ever fail your life. Very seldom when you take a guarantee that you have to pass by the guarantee without reading the small print, the fine print. With God, there is no fine print. God is a guaranteed trust factor that you can put all of your trust in, and God never fails you. Now watch this. You have to trust him, but then you have to know how to talk to him. Watch what the text says. In verses 3 and 4, he says this. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, they knew my path and the way where I walk. They have hidden a trap for me. Look to the right and see, for there is no one who regards me. There is no escape for me. No one cares for my soul. David says, we got to talk to God because the cave has me sad. The cave will affect your psyche. See, you have to understand the enemy. God tells us this. He says, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. You know why God wants your mind strong? Because he knows that if your mind is strong, your faith can be strong. You can keep your focus on him. The enemy wants to mess with your mind, because if the enemy can get in your mind right, you can't think like you ought to think. And then you don't make clean and clear, decisive decisions. So he recognizes that if I can mess with your mind, I can mess with the total of your being, because the enemy knows that if your mind is strong in God, if your mind has been transformed, if your heart is ultimately transformed, you will talk to God in the midst of crisis. But if he can shake your mind just enough, he wants you to get to the point where you start to worry, where you get depressed. And when you get depressed, you start thinking all types of unsavory thoughts, so that you would think to do something to yourself. Because if he can get you to do something to yourself, he knows that he can take you out. And if he can take you out, he knows then that you can never, ever talk to God again. And then ultimately, if he takes you out, you can't talk to God. Then he takes you out of reality of being able to serve God. And then you are no longer a threat to his kingdom. But what he understands